Well, OJ's dead. Everybody can celebrate. He really was one of the most popular figures of the 20th century and notorious at the same time. Rare. Really rare. He also was one of the first to exploit the internet for his own purposes. Here he's on CRIER Today, promoting his internet 2-hour I'll answer anything question session from the year 2000. Other people weren't doing this then. OJ had quite the team. Quite the teams. Well, unless you count the Buffalo Bills.
He was acquitted of double murder in a criminal trial, but found responsible for the deaths of ex-wife Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman in a civil lawsuit. O.J. Simpson, my guest today. O.J. Simpson says he wants to set the record straight. That's why tomorrow night he's holding a 2-hour internet chat session where he says the public will be able to ask any question and get a straight answer. But he's consented to a preview by coming on to take my questions. We have the creator of the AskOJ.com website coming up a bit later. I'll talk to him about the web event. Therefore, Mr. Simpson and I can stick to the substance. Joining me now in studio, O.J. Simpson.
Ms. Quier.
Let me get right to it. The defense team, known as the Dream Team, or a botched prosecution and investigation, to which do you attribute your acquittal?
Well, obviously, I tried to get the most talented people in the field to work for me during the course of the case. I started off trying to get the most talented people to work for LAPD by hiring Henry Lee and Michael Batten, not to work for me, but to work for LAPD. And I think we all realized something was amiss early on when they treated Henry Lee, who was probably one of the most respected men in law enforcement, and they treated Michael Batten as shabbily as they treated him, making it difficult for them to try to investigate the case, which we all were baffled by because they were there to work for LAPD, not for me.
Okay, one of the jurors in the criminal case, Lon Crier, actually, was quoted later on saying the cops and prosecutors botched the case, but he felt you were probably guilty.
Well, I think that probably is why the civil jury, which I didn't really feel that I got a fair trial in the civil case. I understood what they attempted to do in the criminal case is a prosecutor's job to prosecute, even though I think they were aware of some untruths that they were trying to give to the jury, like, for instance, my relationship with Nicole, and at times they attempted to muddy the water by just, you know, this whole timeline of events that was going on in my life at the time. You know, when I speak at colleges, I'm amazed at what they thought was facts in my case, and it turned out they weren't facts that the jury heard. They were part of arguments that Marshall may have made in trying to, you know, win an argument with the judge about what evidence should be in and out, and what the media told the public, and what the pundits told the public about what happened in courts that day. And I spoke at a lot of law schools, and they're always amazed by the time I finished what they thought were facts in my case were not facts in my case.
Well, of course, facts, evidence, opinion, all of it differs just a bit, but you have criticized members of the media for representing things as facts that were not. Is it fair to say, however, that you have given more than one version of several different critical events during the, let me finish the question, during the course of both trials, and those have been put out, so it's hard sometimes for the media to determine what you feel the facts are?
Well, I think that's an inaccurate statement.
Were you playing golf? Were you taking a shower? Were you on the phone?
I did all of those things. But the point I'm saying is, for instance, in my civil trial, I hear now about, oh, he got caught in so many inconsistencies in the criminal trial. I did 12 days of depositions, 12 days. They taped and filmed every one of them. Not one instance during my whatever amount of days I was on the stand, which has to be at least 2 weeks, that they ever bring a tape from my deposition and say, look at the inconsistencies here. Not once. Not once did that happen.
Well, let me ask you about the difference between those two trials, because obviously you were acquitted in the criminal case and found liable in the civil case. Your testimony was the biggest difference between the two trials. There were others, but the biggest difference was that people heard you on the stand. Do you feel that your testimony was what encouraged the jury to find you liable?
I don't think so, because I think right when I got off the stand, of course, I was not incarcerated at the time, so I can see all the reports and from the lawyers and the media that was there, and they all said there was nothing of substance or significant that came out of it. You know, at the time, it was like it was a no-win for either side. Obviously, as I stated, they didn't find me stating any inconsistencies. I just think the judges both were somewhat different, and I think because of Fujisaki retiring after the trial, he allowed a lot of things in that should not have been let into a courtroom. As a matter of fact, I heard Petrocelli, the other lawyers, on numerous occasions during breaks, would stop. They would look at my lawyers, and they'd all be shaking their heads and say, boy, where was this law? I mean, where jurisprudence is out of the window. Where in the history of jurisprudence has this ruling?
Well, that is interesting, because if you were to read most legal commentary about the two judges, Judge Ito was the recipient of much more criticism.
Yeah, I think that's because I won.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that has more to do with I won. I don't think there's any doubt that he did more to help the prosecution than he did to help us. 90% of the rulings went to the prosecution and not to us, and he made some rulings that defied, logic. For instance, he allowed Paratus, a guy who testified under oath on numerous occasions about how much blood he took, and once my guys pointed out that there was a problem with it and they couldn't explain it away, they went to this guy's home and let him change his testimony without even telling us, and then allowed the jury to see that tape. Now, I don't think there's a lawyer or a judge in this country
Well,
who
you're
would say
referring to whether he took 8 cc's or 6.5 cc's, and ultimately he said he must have used the smaller syringe and took 6.5 cc's.
Yeah. And even though it's a murder case, and he was positive and sure, and the thing was, there was the tube that he had, had the marks on it and everything. The point I'm making is, when can a witness take a 180 on his testimony at his home with only the prosecution, and without us being able to cross-examine him again, and that be shown to a jury? I never could get that. I never understood that.
Let me ask you, do you think you would have been acquitted if you were white?
I was acquitted.
If you were white?
I think the way the case went, I think whoever I was, I would have been white. I always felt that was the racism. When they were talking about the race card, I thought the media played the race card first. From day one, they were talking about how many blacks were in the jury, how many blacks were in jury. I'm going to tell you something real simple. And I wasn't an all-black jury, and anybody from Europe who didn't follow the case, if they came here now, they would be under the impression it was an all-black jury. It wasn't. My jury came to the conclusion that they came to because they didn't trust the police. During my trial, there was the Dole trial going on in Los Angeles, the Samoan family, and a white jury, virtually all white jury, came to the conclusion that 41 Southern California law enforcement officers not only lied on the stand, but planted evidence as well as planted injuries, on themselves. It cost the city of Los Angeles eventually $23 million, which I think they just recently paid. This was an all-white jury, virtually all-white jury, and they didn't believe the police. The point I'm saying is they did not believe the police, yet they never got criticized. The race issue never came up. They weren't called unintelligent, and to me that was a sort of a racist reaction to the media, because they gave an undue expectation of a guilty verdict, and then when it wasn't a guilty verdict, they had to explain it.
Well, let me ask you about the police, because I find that very interesting. Why would the members of the LAPD that had befriended you in the past, had provided you off-duty security, had turned their backs or cut you slack on domestic calls there at Rockingham, why would they create a conspiracy against you in a matter of several hours when they didn't even know if you were in the country?
Well, first of all, most of what you just said is incorrect. I've never been given any slack in any domestic issue at Rockingham, ever. Oh. The one incident that happened to me at Rockingham, the only time there was any physical confrontation with Nicole and I, which I admitted I reacted wrong because Even her mother and best friends told America that she attacked me first, but I was wrong in how I reacted to that attack, and I never made any excuse. And the second officer who testified in our trial told the jury that he never made an excuse. I went to court. I told the judge I was wrong. That was the only. What other time did they ever give me any slack?
Well, let me ask you, because the quotes that I have from that that New Year's 1989 incident was Nicole going out to the cops going, quote, "You never do anything about him. You talk to him and leave. I want him arrested." Your response was, "Guys, the police have been out here 8 times, and now you're going to lock me up?"
No, not out. See, that's a misconception that the public has. They've been at my house for autographs. So I always had cops at my house. They'll come by my house in their cars. They see me in the yard. They'll come in. I give them a coat. They want to see the Heisman Trophy. I said, all these guys know me, you know, not for no domestic dispute. As a matter of fact, Sergeant or the lieutenant or the detective who investigated this told the jury, hey, we contacted all the stations and all the police that have worked in that area. Had they ever been to Nicole's or my house for any this domestic discord? They checked all the 911 records. Was there ever any 911 calls from the Rockingham estate? And they said no. I mean, it was no. The media took that comment, or what the police claim my comment was, and said that I said police were out there for domestic discord. How do you make that leap?
All right, well, let's eliminate that then, because I don't have the answer to that.
But that was testified to, incidentally, by the police. They have no record of coming to my house for that previous
despite their record of your response to them out there, whatever that 8 times referred to, we don't
that's
know.
what this one officer
Well, let me ask you, you just then described a very friendly relationship with the police.
Well,
coming in, check out the Heisman, stop the car, come in, have a Coke. I mean, these guys treated you like a good guy,
well,
right?
Let me point out to you also, Ms. Crier, since my trial with many witnesses, I tell you, I've often had police cars come to my house at Rockingham, sometimes with 30 or 40 people out. 2 cars one day showed up. My security said, OJ, there's some police officers out here, 2 cars. They want you to come out. I came out, they shook my hand, they told me to hang in there, Jews. There's a lot of us believe in you. Many people, I play golf with police officers.
So again, why would these guys cook up a conspiracy like this?
It wasn't these guys. I think what you fail to realize is that in New York, do you think all police officers are bad?
Absolutely
We know
not.
there's some. But there's not all police officers in Los Angeles are bad. I mean, where have you ever heard an officer say that all niggers should be burned?
Okay, so
he loved the smell of dead niggers. Or if he found a black man with a white woman, and he'd done nothing, that I'd create a thing for him. That's what Mark Fuhrman said on those tapes.
So is Mark Fuhrman the guy?
I think Mark and I think Van Adder is just as culpable. I think what happened was they got there, they probably felt I may have been guilty, they needed to get in my house, and they created reasons to get into my house. You may have noticed in the chronology that every time Mark Fuhrman disappeared, he came back with a reason to go a step further. He disappeared, and all of a sudden he came back with a reason to jump the wall, alleging something on the Bronco, which they never tested. He also alleged he saw spots on the Bronco, which anybody, when you look at the court record and you see where he claimed he saw them, you couldn't see those spots if they were there inside or outside of the car if the door was closed on the car. And then he climbs the wall, he checks all the doors, you know, claiming that they're looking for me, that's something to be wrong. But the minute they found out where I was, you know, and got my daughter to come around and walk him in the house, they claimed on the stand that they were worried about somebody was bleeding in the house. They walked in the house and didn't look for anybody.
Okay, well, let me ask you about Fuhrman. He was the 17th officer at the Bundy site, your ex-wife's condo.
Yes.
The 17th officer. Not one of the 16 before him had found a second glove, and yet you are then saying he must have found something that all 16 had overlooked, removed it surreptitiously, and planted it at Rockingham.
Well, see, once again, that bothers me because people in the media, and I'm not signaling you out, totally misstate the facts in the case. When we were trying to show that there had been contamination around the body, the police went out of their way. Rossi and all these guys said none of these other people went around the body. They came to the intersection and they sent them here and they sent them there. They didn't go near the body. Now, I think it's quite obvious now that the only place you could see this alleged, this gloves or hat, you had to be at a certain place near the bodies to see it. I mean,
but in fact, the initial officer on the site who was walked through by the civil attorneys who criticized prosecution for never even having called him, nor walked him through, nor interviewed him before they put him on the stand. He said, yeah, I found this stuff. No question. I'm first officer on the scene. I saw the glove. I saw the hat. No doubt about it. And that came out in the civil trial.
No, he said he saw something under a leaf that may have looked. He claimed he didn't go over to move to see if it was one or two gloves. I mean, you had to get close. I mean, if I saw a glove and a hat over there under a leaf, I mean, I don't know what's under the cap or what's. They all claimed that they didn't go near it. And now, you know, I saw a show the other night where they were saying how many officers saw the gloves. Why is it that that's not what their testimony is? Their testimony is when all of these officers came, they kept them away from the bodies. Other than the first officer, after that was only the detectives that went anywhere near the bodies, and the only detectives, the first two detectives on the scene, was Fuhrman and his partner Phillips. Their testimony under oath, and you can look at the record, is that they had these guys come to the intersection where the head guy was, and he would direct them to go to this corner, go knock on houses, and they kept them away from the bodies. Now, as we get further and further from my case, so like the size of that fish, you know, the story changes. Now, all of a sudden, 30 cops saw the gloves. Well, that's not what the testimony supports.
Okay. Could you explain a statement which has really intrigued me that came out of that Esquire article, which was the first big print piece you did after the trial? Quote, let's say I committed the crime. Even if I did this, it would have been because I loved her, right? What does that mean?
Well, first of all, I think if you spoke to Greta Van Susteren or Linda Deutsch and going to, you know, we doing analogies and stuff, this is something I've said often, but it's a setup to something. What they do, you guys edit it at one place, and one of the reasons I don't like doing
you can't just explain it for me, however you want to explain it.
I'm trying to do it. They're always saying that the motive of me murdering her was because I loved her, or I was jealous, and I was all of that. So let's accept that. So you're saying that if I kill her, you got to admit that I loved her. Well, if I loved her and she's begging me to get back in my life, will do anything for me to let her move back in my house. Spent the last year of her life trying to get into my house and into my life, have written a letter that she'd go anywhere in the world with me, whatever I wanted her to do, then why would I kill her? You guys leave out all of that. But even the writer explained that they took just this one little portion, and I guess to sell the magazine, and everybody ran with that one little portion. But even the writer says that was a whole explanation of it. But many people in the media who I speak to have heard me say that back then. When the point comes up that the motive, alleged motive, when I'm in law schools and they said, and I ask what's the motive, they say because you were jealous and you loved her, and I go through that chronology with them.
Okay, so point being,
there'd be no reason to murder a person who's doing everything to get back in your life.
Then let me ask you this: if you're innocent,
which I am,
why'd you run?
I didn't run. See, that's another fallacy that the media put out there. You may have noticed that the Bronco thing never came up in any of my trials because they realized that it wasn't an escape attempt. But they were able to use the media implying that was an escape attempt to set this image that, hey, if he was innocent, why would he run? If I was running, and they thought I was running, wouldn't you think that'd be a vital point to bring up in my various trials?
Well, there's a real dispute among legal individuals, plus those that have written books, that they thought it was in part way exculpatory, in part way inculpatory, and they are now sorry that they didn't put in evidence of flight for the jury to consider. So
when people lose, there's always hindsight's 20/20. But the simple fact is, I wasn't leaving. The simple fact is, when they first heard from me, it was Al Collins calling them, telling them he was bringing me to my house, and we were going back to L.A. from the Cold Cemetery.
Well, you were absent for about 6 or 7 hours after the time you left Kardashian's until the police intercepted the cell phone calls, or Al Collins called them. However you want it. Fine.
No, however the facts are. That's all I'm dealing with.
However, what happened during those 6 or 7 hours?
Well, I had been put. I wasn't a guy that took a lot of medication. And they had gotten a therapist or a psychologist or psychiatrist, and the morning of Nicole's funeral, they started me on a medication. I honestly don't remember the funeral, and I didn't even know where she was buried. I mean, even if they hadn't charged me, if I went to visit her grave, I wouldn't know where to go. And when I heard they were going to arrest me, I was despondent. I was depressed. I was in a lot of pain. I was hurting. And I just told AC, man, take me to her grave. And when
but that was an hour away from Kardashian's.
Yes, And when we got there, he said, all right, come on. And when we got there, there was a police officer car blocking the entrance to it, which the only way I can know that is to be there. And we went around back because I was trying to get in because I just wanted everything to stop. I was seeing some very negative stories about me and my character in the paper that was just absolutely on the media because nobody told me anything. So I'm watching the media that week, and I was real despondent. We stopped and parked in a sort of an orange grove, and he was saying, what do you want to do? And I said, well, maybe they're going to drive off and we can go in. He got out of the car, and I got in the back of the car, and I pulled a gun out, and I just wanted my pain to stop, and I didn't know. And I heard Dan Rather on the radio make a comment about, oh, evidently the police had been at his house 8 or 9 times for domestic, reasons, and I said, what? And at about that time, AC came back, and he saw I had a gun, and he said, hey, man, what are you doing? I'm taking you home to your mother. And I said, take me to mother. I said, did you hear what this guy just said? that they've been in my house 8 or 9. So that sort of anger sometimes brings you out of something. And I was hurting a little bit, but that sort of angered me. And he got on the phone and called LAPD and told him he was bringing me home.
Okay, well, what you've described is a 6 or 7 hour time span. Yeah. Now, during that time, when did you pick up the $8,000 in cash, the gun, the disguise, and the passport?
Once again, when I got out of jail, I went to, and they were giving me my stuff, and they give me $3.80-something cents. And I said, wait a minute, where's my $10,000? I said, I read in the media that I had $10,000 and all of that crap. Where is the $10,000 that you guys claimed?
So you're saying you didn't have the money, you didn't have the disguise, you didn't have the passport?
My passport is always in my bag. When I had bought 3 weeks previous this mustache and goatee, which is a one-time paste-on thing, you throw it away, it went into my bag. And it's, how often you clean your grip. My grip that I have here now has my passport in it. I'm not going anywhere. It also has numerous things that may have been in there for 2 or 3 weeks. The point of the matter is, if I'm going to use a disguise, LAPD took that bag when I came back from Chicago. All of those things were in it then when I came back from Chicago. If I'm going to use a disguise, why would a guy use a hat and a glove and not use a disguise when he's committing murder? If I'm trying to run, when was I going to use this disguise? My passport is always there. I take my passport in my travel bag at all times.
If that's all that happened...
And let me also add to this. If I was running, where was my toothbrush? I'm on medications, Motrin and all of them. Where was my medication? Where are the things that I would have needed if that's what I was attempting to do? But that whole money thing was just, it was just made up. AC had maybe $7,000 I had given him previously to give to Arnell and Jason because I didn't think my older kids would want to go to school. But I had no money. I had $3.
Okay, if that's all that happened during the chase, why did AC take the
fifth? It wasn't a chase. It was
during the
back.
Bronco event?
Yeah.
Why did AC Cowlings take the fifth in regard to that?
I don't know. I really don't know. Obviously, if they thought AC had done something wrong, they could have prosecuted him. He never was prosecuted in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know what the reasons why his lawyer... I didn't even know he took the fifth until you just told me, to be honest. So I'm sure you'd have to talk to AC and his lawyer about that, but I'm sure there was other things involved.
Some might say that there's a very unique combination here. Gloves, for which Nicole had the receipt that she had bought for you. Very unique.
Debatable.
Okay.
Nicole wore men's gloves also.
Okay. Very unique gloves, combined with those, quote, ugly ass, unique Bruno Magli shoes.
Yes.
Some Bronco fibers, very unique, only 6 sold in L.A. on Ron Goldman's body. Obviously, the blood, the hair samples, all of these things severely limit the range of suspects. Why, after all this time, do you have no leads on the, quote, real killer? Well,
why don't maybe 2,000 unsolved murders in Los Angeles since Nicole's death?
Not with those kind of circumstantial
Well, we don't know what the
definers.
Circumstances are. Those, first of all, you overstate some of those circumstances. You're talking about hair fibers. Nobody could say this was a match to my hair, and there was about 8 or 9 different hair fibers on that thing. The gloves didn't fit. The gloves, to my knowledge, weren't mine. When they talk about a receipt of gloves, they had a receipt of 3 or 4 other pair of gloves that weren't at my house. What did I take? 4 pair of gloves over here to do this.
And the Bruno Magli shoes were, of course, a fraud,
The Bruno Magli shoes
right?
were totally a fraud.
Oh,
and I think we're going to prove that in the not-too-distant future, incident. I can't talk about it now, but I think that will be proven in the not-too-distant future. It's like I saw Red Book the other day, and I saw Michelle Pfeiffer say, those aren't my lips. And they weren't, evidently. Yeah. You know, they can do it about
so
anything.
The Bronco fibers, with only 6 of those types of Bronco sold in L.A. that show up on Ron Goldman's body.
Let me say that again, 6. I see that, the fiber thing. And I don't recall a fiber on Ron Goldman's body personally. I don't recall that. I thought they said a hair was on his breast. I don't really recall that. But I first of all, I got to tell you about the FBI. I don't believe anything that those guys. One of them we know was a guy who lied about testing his own blood and finding the same levels of EDTA, because the scientific community has proven that you cannot have EDTA in your blood. So when Marcia Clark said to the jury, so what, there was EDTA in the blood? It's in all our blood. It's in the food we eat.
Well, actually, I will disagree with you, because very low levels there are reasons that those would show up other than testing procedures, and the very low levels that were present, as I understand, on the blood on the gate and the blood on the socks, were entirely consistent with not having been a result of pre-testing the blood.
Well, that's a fact that I haven't seen that fact anywhere on this earth. And the 2 leading people who've been dealing with EDTA longer than anyone, one of them was one of my investigators, said that what you just said is not true. It's there, it's not there. There's no reason for it to be on those socks. You know, those socks were I think more than any piece of evidence that came across this planet, there was about 8 different things about that sock that proved that they were planted. And the jury believed that they were planted.
Okay, if the evidence pointed to somebody that you cared about, somebody you loved, even a family member, what would you do?
I don't know. I don't know. I obviously it didn't. You're asking me to do something that on the spur of the moment here that I never even considered, so I really couldn't speak to that.
Okay. Do you think it's ironic at all that with your wealthy Brentwood lifestyle that you became the symbol for many African Americans of racial injustice in this country?
Well, racial injustice has lasted long before me. I think it's the amount of media that was given to my case. Obviously, that was the case. And then this misconception that the white public tends to want to push, that O.J. wanted to be white and they lived in a white neighborhood. Anybody who was ever at my house saw that the majority of my close friends were blacks. You know, I have a lot of white friends. I'm not a racist. Unfortunately, Hertz hired me, not Afro Sheen, you know. So you see me publicly more in a white environment because that's who I was working for. I was working for, started originally with ABC. They didn't have many blacks working at ABC. And with Chevrolet, I thought I was the only black in advertising working for Chevrolet. And I was a source of pride to the black community, much like in many ways Jackie Robinson. He had to deal and work in a white world, and he did well, and he opened the doors for others. I've seen HBO had a special about the black athlete and the media and stuff, and they gave me credit for opening the doors.
There was somebody who didn't actually give you a lot of credit, or certainly issued a challenge. There was an L.A. African-American activist following the criminal trial who called on you to focus on the problems of blacks, or, quote, risk being the #1 ingrate in America. Clear implication was that the black community had done you a favor.
Well, that's what he felt. This is the first I've heard that also, incidentally. So, I mean, the individual's got individual feelings. I mean, I know numerous people in the community, black organizations in the community that I've been working with.
NAACP, Urban League, what?
No, Christian women, you know, this is a coalition of Christian women. I've done many events for them in Los Angeles. I think the Links, which is probably the largest black female organization, they went public and told America that I was their biggest contributor for years leading up to this, and unfortunately I don't have the money to contribute to them now. But, you know, it's interesting. You take one person who may have said whatever he said. I'm raising 2 kids. I don't have the time to do much, but I have been involved in what I can be involved with. I mean, I think the first few events that I attended had to do with sickle cell since I've been out.
Okay. 70% in a recent survey, 70% of the country, Fox actually just came out with one yesterday and said 68% still believe you're guilty. Other than professing your innocence,
yes,
what can you say to them tomorrow night to change their minds?
Well, I don't know. I take a vote when I speak at schools, and when I go in, and it's normally 80% think I'm guilty. When I leave, it's 90% or more that feel I got screwed. only because of their misconception of what evidence was in the case. I feel that the jury didn't convict me. I felt that the media convicted me. I felt that the media gave many people in the public an unrealistic or a thought of conviction. They gave the idea that I was going to be convicted, and when I wasn't convicted, they had to explain why I wasn't convicted. 40%.
Do you recall the, I mean,
can I finish, please?
Sure.
40% of, I would say, of my friends now that become friends of mine since my trial, when I first met them, either they or their wives thought I was guilty. None of them feel that way now. So I understand why people feel I'm guilty. I do understand that. And be honest with you, I am not really going on this show to try to say, hey, you got to believe maybe some people on the fence may fall my side. Maybe people think I'm guilty, won't come over at all. I don't know. My focus, I hope I get more questions so I can give examples about how unfairly the media has reported this and how inaccurately big people in the media, Barbara Walters, Katie Couric, Larry King, I mean, undisputed. They cannot dispute the stories that I'm going to tell about what they did, that one phone call could have corrected what they were reporting to the public, and they just lied to the public.
And I've sort of asked you a version of this. Let me go back to it then again, because you have said that many interviewers have misrepresented. The media basically convicted you. But back to the inconsistencies, which you say you were not directed to by Petrocelli, but I would disagree, having read the transcript. You know, again, people are hearing, you know, I was chipping golf balls, I was taking a shower, I was on the phone, I was with Paula Barbieri on the Bronco. No, I was actually in the driveway. I cut my finger at home. I cut my finger at Chicago. No, I was playing with Justin the next day and I cut my finger. How is the media supposed to delve through simply your own story to try and determine what you are saying the facts are?
But what you just said was incorrect. Yes, I said I took a shower. Yes, I went looking for golf balls. I mean, what did you do between 7 and 7:30, let's say, and 9 last night? What does most people did? They did more than one thing unless they went to sleep at that time. You know, they may have got something out of the fridge and ate. They may have watched a little TV. They may have went and laid their clothes out for what they're going to wear tomorrow. I didn't sit in one place in those 3 or 4 hours because I was purposely trying to stay awake. And I told them what I did, that it has never varied what I did. Certain things they asked me about, I had no knowledge of. I didn't know. I mean, you talk about, oh, his finger was cut. I think there was 4 or 5 witnesses on the stand. One guy was looking at my ring finger to see if I had a Super Bowl ring. He didn't see any cuts. I mean, these people don't know me. People I sign autographs at the airport. They didn't see any cuts or blood on my body. So the point I'm saying is, those are the things that it's almost like Fuhrman. I had never seen Fuhrman on TV when the host didn't say to him, "Well, you writing a script?" You know, which we know, even the person he's working with thought he was serious what he was saying. But they never mentioned the live witnesses that came into the court. White women, one who thought I was guilty, but she had to be honest about this man's racial animus. You guys never talk about that. You try to give him I mean, not you in particular, but they give him a pass that, oh, he was just trying to exaggerate with a script. He wasn't exaggerating with all of these other people who weren't writing the script, who asked him to leave their homes within 15 minutes, get out of my house, wait in the car for your partner, who broke down in tears because of the venom that came off this guy. And when the facts came out with this tape that we proved that this guy is a flat-out racist, everybody's tried to explain it away.
Why don't you say that to his face?
I don't know. I don't see Mark Fuhrman. You know, let me tell you something funny. I saw a story the other day that I saw Petrocelli's son, and I scowled at him at the golf course. I didn't even know the guy had a son. You know, and if I saw Petrocelli tomorrow, I wouldn't scowl at him. I ran in.
Would you say all this? Would you say all this to Fuhrman's face?
I say it publicly. I'll say it to his face. I'll say it to anybody. It don't bother me. I don't choose to be in this guy's presence, but if I'm in his presence, I've run into Phillips, his partner, at a golf shop. I spoke to him. Hey, man, how's your golf game? I didn't even know you played golf. I ran into Looper. I ran into Fung, who got caught lying on the stand, if you let me finish, please. Like, you know, lying on the stand. All of those guys, I tell you, I was very gracious to them. I don't carry animus my biggest animus right now, I think those guys are getting what they deserve. I thought Fuhrman should have got more than what he got. I know that they're going to answer somewhere to somebody. My anger is at the media more than Marcia Clark, who I know lied and who I know knew the truth. Other DAs tried to tell her about Fuhrman. We had statements of that, Yet she tells you guys on TV today that if she knew about Mark Fuhrman, she wouldn't have used it. She knew about Mark Fuhrman. I saw a guy on TV one day say, well, he's never been accused of this before. That's untrue. He has been. They settled out of court once they knew they needed him for my case, and they sealed the record, and Ito wouldn't let us unseal it.
You pin him. You say Mark Fuhrman, and then you say maybe Van Etter, but Mark Fuhrman's the guy.
No,
why don't you take him on?
Because Mark didn't kill Nicole.
Why don't you take him on?
If he wants to come on the internet, these guys will give him an.
Well, I'll tell you
as a matter
what,
of fact, F. Lee Bailey and I see the problem with you media guys. First of all, let me finish.
You got it. No, actually, I've got to interrupt here because we're almost through, and you got it because Mark
He comes on the
Fuhrman,
internet where somebody can benefit because
Mark Fuhrman says he wants me to extend an invitation to you for a national debate, and I'm sure he would be glad to do that.
If he comes on the internet, I'll be glad to do it.
Okay. Yeah. One final question. There was a very famous acting coach that you worked with, Lee Strasberg. Everybody in the business
I hate to say this is a lie. This is a lie.
You didn't work in...
Never once have I ever been to an acting class. Lee Strasberg and I were social friends.
Exactly.
But I've never been to a...
I didn't say you were at... I said a world-famous acting coach, Lee Strasberg, that you knew.
Apologize.
Paid you a very rare compliment.
Yeah.
He said, quote, he already is an actor, an excellent one, a natural.
Thank you.
Should we take him at his word?
Well, I hope so, even though all the critics of my movies felt differently. But yeah, I think he said I was natural because a natural athlete is themselves. They put themselves in a position, and I guess that's what method acting is. I think I've always been considered a pretty gracious guy, a nice guy, and I never tried to play away from who I am in any movie that I've done. I play me, you know. So that's what he complimented me, that I can be natural in front of a camera. And method acting, I believe, is the concept of method acting is to become the character you play. I don't think many of my characters, maybe the situation I've been in have been different, but my character is always the same in everything that I play, and it's basically me.
Okay, real quickly, Marshak is going to join us, the president of Entertainment Network, in just a second. But right before Justin and Sydney, I know I've heard you say that they haven't addressed the issue about Nicole. They haven't asked you directly, and you won't deal with it until then. But you've been heckled in public in front of them. How do you deal with those situations?
Well, one, you got to understand. It is so rare. I mean, there's this feeling out here that everywhere I go, he's a pariah, and that he goes into restaurants and people leave first class. This crap doesn't happen in my life.
What happens when it does? I mean, when it does occur, and you've described these situations.
I think maybe once. I think with Sydney and Jess, maybe. Well, they don't react to it. My kids I got terrific kids. It's you know, some idiot says something idiotic. My kids are not taught to let that disrupt who they are and what they are. People ask me, how are you doing all of this? He shows no remorse. Hey, all my life, I've tried to keep an even keel. You saw my family in court where Goldman was going crazy every time he didn't like something in court. You didn't see my sisters or my family doing that. We were raised to be straight and honest and deal with pressure. I can handle pressure my whole life. I've been under pressure.
But you've chosen not to deal with the question about their mother's death?
How would I choose? I must. How many times can I tell you? I seek professional help in dealing with raising a kid as a single man. I've read probably more books than you've read about raising
a kid as a single man. You probably have.
Well, as a single parent even. I don't know if you're a single parent. As a single parent, I've talked to numerous therapists, and it's all consistently the same. So if I follow that direction, the media is trying to make it sound like I'm being irresponsible in some way. I followed the direction of the court, of the kids' lawyers, of the therapists and the child psychologists that the court brought in my custody case. All I'm doing is following their direction, which I think any reasonable person would do. Okay. And so, I mean, why is it I'm doing something wrong here?
Is it fair to ask you this? If you find out any information that would actually lead to pursuit of other killers, you'll let us know?
Of course. And I will say this. I don't understand for the life of me why, when the police knew that Faye Rusnick was lying in their original interviews with her, I read every report. When they went out to verify the things they said, they knew she was lying. The question I asked is, why didn't they try to pin her down and find out why she told those lies? In her book, when we finally got her, she kept attributing it to editor's errors, you know, these lies.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark Fuhrman, Internet, got that set up here right now. If you stay with us, David Marshak,
we've talked about this.
He's coming in. He'll join us right after this.
We've talked about this.
Don't go away. As we told you earlier, tomorrow O.J. Simpson will respond directly to questions from the public over the internet. Joining me now is David Marshlack, the president of Entertainment Network, the company that operates AskOJ.com. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start. Your press release states that some questions will be selected randomly and others will be selected by Mr. Simpson based upon the number that come in, however they want. So there's no guarantee that if somebody sends in a question, they get an answer.
Actually, what we're doing is the questions will come in. They'll be randomly selected for him. We are grouping them together in categories. We're sure there'll be a lot of alike questions, but he will try and answer all questions that do come in, and if we have to extend it or if we have to go to a second show so everybody gets their questions answered, then we will.
I just want to add in, when do I select any questions?
He will not be selected.
I never knew I was
going to be done randomly by a computer system.
All right, but I had read specifically in the release, and it may be what you're describing as once they have been selected, if there are groupings and enough people are asking the same question, you can then choose to answer that particular question. Is that?
No, I have no choice.
Yeah, he has no choice. They will come in, they will be grouped alike questions, then they will be fed into the computer and will randomly be selected for him to answer. He will have no say-so.
Okay, obviously, Mr. Simpson, you are giving them promotion for their channel. Your appearance is providing promotion. You talk about giving some monies to charity. What do you get out of this?
A chance to, I think, clear the record on things. Every time I talk to a college, and when I left Oxford, for instance, and spoke to that group of kids, I always feel good because I feel like I've extended the truth. I've cleaned up a lot of things and misconceptions that the people have had about my trial and my case and the evidence of my case. As I pointed out to you, the reaction has always been almost a 180 for most of the people in the room. My problem in recent years has been, as far as if we get from this case, the further we get, and I'm watching shows, even your show, you can be on some subject has nothing to do with me. I'm invariably brought into the subject, and invariably, not necessarily your show, the host of the show throws out some inaccurate fact from my case. I mean, and the further we get from my case, the more accurate those facts become. And it's irritating. I've never called a show. I think one time I called a show that I wasn't solicited to call a show. I think about 4 times you hear OJ call into this show and said this. All of those cases, they asked me to. They've sent me numbers to call and have other people call me to call in. The last time I did it, I wasn't going to call in. I was packing, and that host of that show on Fox, he made this whole scenario based on a lie that he told his audience that I said under oath. And it was a lie, so I felt compelled to call to straighten that up. And unfortunately, Denise Brown got involved at that point. My purpose was not to talk to her at all. And
it was a relatively unpleasant exchange.
Yeah, it was unpleasant.
David, Katie Kirk pointed out yesterday that 2 of the 3 charities that you all have named had not given permission to use their name, had not said they would accept money. And in fact, we got a fax this morning from the Camp for Good Times. It says, quote, "We do not allow our name to be associated with any fundraising activities without prior approval. We have not given approval to Mr. Simpson or his representatives to use our name." Do you think that is fraudulent at all to represent to those who might call in that their dollars are going to these charities when these charities are saying, whoa, wait a minute, nobody's talked to us?
We've never said that. You know, what we have said
totally wrong
is that we will donate money to charities. And I didn't think that, maybe this is my mistake, that we needed to notify these charities that we were going to be sending money. I mean, I make donations all the time. A lot of times I make them anonymously. Sometimes I don't. And, you know, this isn't a charity event. We are definitely in the business to make money. We want this to be a success, and if it is a success, then the charities will be successful and they will get some of these funds. But we have never said that, you know, this is a event sponsored by or in cooperation with. We have just said he would like us to donate some of the money. We will donate some of the money.
And I got to point out, the only reason anybody has heard the name of these charities is that when I first got interviewed, and I said, well, they're going to send some money to charities, they got deluged with calls from the media trying to figure out who the charities were. I used to do an event for Camp Good Times that their name was on. I never said that this was the Camp Good Times interview. I just told them I named that charity, I named 2 other charities, and the people involved in those charities I have talked to. And I told them, hey, I'm doing this thing, and I'm going to send you guys some money. Well, one of the charities is the reason why I'm doing it, Hitway. But the point is, This is not a charitable event. This isn't when you send your money, you get the write-off, the charitable donation.
Well,
and we've never implied that was the case.
Let me specifically
it was the media wanting to know who the charities was is the only reason they've been mentioned.
David, specifically, how are you going to determine what amount of money you need before any dollars go to charity? In other words, you could ultimately spend all the money you make running this thing and not a dime will go to charity.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
I've already made a promise that I will send some money to charity, even if this thing doesn't make any money. I mean, just yesterday.
How much?
We haven't decided yet. We're going to look in it, see if it's profitable. If it's not, then we'll donate what we can to these charities. You know, just this week I went to my son's doctor, who's a diabetic, and after talking to his doctor, I decided that I was going to take some more of the funds and send them to the Juvenile Diabetic Association. Okay. But this is something that I haven't mentioned to Mr. Simpson, and I don't think it needs to be mentioned. I think whatever we donate, they'll be glad to receive, and the kids should be happy. I mean, the kids want this money. They're kids with cancer. How can somebody make a decision that they don't want the money for?
Yeah, and once again, I think this whole issue about the charity is a media-created issue. We've never talked about it.
We can move on to something else then. All right, we can move on to something else. You talk about being, very clearly it is said that O.J. Simpson is not being compensated for his appearance, for the chat. What about all the signed memorabilia?
No, actually, he's not. We're not giving him any money whatsoever. The memorabilia was somebody that he introduced me to that wanted to put memorabilia on the site, and they've made a deal with us where the merchandise will be sold, and he will receive money, and they will pay us. Again, I've never stood there and said that I don't want this to be successful. I do want this to be successful.
Are those companies giving you any compensation?
No. As a matter of fact, the guy who's putting the memorabilia up is the guy who's handled my memorabilia for years and had been called in many times.
Why would you give that away?
Listen. Many times in debtor hearings. He's been calling the debtor hearings, and he's run up some costs, some legal costs. My last debtor hearing, which was a year and a half or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, they asked me, were you signing autograph memorabilia? And I said, yes. And where's the money going? I said, to help pay Mike's legal fees. You mean you're not getting nothing? I told them, no, I'm not getting nothing. So they knew that beforehand. And this is a further way of me trying to help this guy pay some of the debts to his lawyers that had been incurred because of his association with me.
David, what about in-kind compensation? Because obviously your transportation around promoting the website, limos, hotel rooms, I assume there is then a lot of in-kind compensation to Mr. Simpson, which is not necessarily handing him a check for his services.
Right, absolutely. And I was kind of surprised this morning. I got up and expected my hotel bill to be huge, but actually NBC had picked up most of it. So a lot of it is being taken care of by other people. You know, we just hope that AskOJ.com is successful. That's what we're hoping.
And ultimately then, if the Goldman or Brown family subpoenaed all the contracts and all the payments, that sort of thing, they're not going to come up with any sort of financial relationship with Mr. Simpson.
And I even made it known that I would invite them, you know, to come in and look. We don't have a problem with them. You know, we're not hiding anything. This thing has whirlwind, where we're actually going to do another site called theirside.com because we've gotten so much out of this, where people that are controversial, that are tired with the media, changing things around, cutting and changing what they say, to come on a website, tell their side of the story, let the public ask them questions direct in an unedited, uncut way.
So then you're fine with what we were talking about with Mark Fuhrman and O.J. Simpson sitting down on the internet and
I actually would
debate.
invite him to come on AskOJ.com and talk directly to him, debate him.
Well,
to be honest with you, I mean, this is my choice. I don't like Mark Fuhrman. I would rather do it with Marshall Clark than with Mark Fuhrman. See, the media likes this stuff because you guys get some out of it. I get nothing out of any of this. I want to talk to the public about the facts of my case. If there's some way I can benefit from debating Mark Fuhrman, I would love to benefit.
You said here over and over again.
I would love to on the internet.
Today.
I would love to do it on the internet, not with the media.
Great.
I would love to debate Marshall Clark on the internet.
Well, the point being, you repeatedly said what you want is the truth out there. Yeah. You want the people to hear the facts, hear the truth.
No facts is going to come out with a debate with Mark Fuhrman. What's going to come out with a debate with Mark Fuhrman? I mean, if they can set it up, I would love to do it. But you guys, this is all media fodder. Just like the lie detector test was all media fodder. And it's almost ridiculous. What is Mark going to say to me that I ain't already said? What am I going to say to him that he hasn't already said? He's going to say he's not a racist, despite on the record he's a racist. You can't change what I'm saying.
How can you keep saying you want this to benefit you when, in fact, you, on the other hand, keep saying, I'm not getting anything out of this?
When you say benefit me, the benefit to me is that the facts will come out and they'll know that when people in the media has gone on and said various things about me, they were lying. This is the truth. And they can't debate it. Nothing that I'm going to say on the media that they can't go back and get a tape and see that person was lying, just like that host that was on that show last week. He had to say at the end of the show, he lied. That's the only thing I'm looking to get out of this. I want the public to understand facts of my case. Does Mark Fuhrman, I don't know what Mark Fuhrman has to say. I saw him on TV once or twice. I knew he was on TV once with Larry King. And as I said earlier, and we had Pat McKenna was going to debate him. He told Larry King an hour before the show he didn't want Pat McKenna on the show. He wanted to be on by himself. And Larry King went on and told America, well, we invited people from the OJ camp, and they all declined. When it was Larry King that told Pat McKenna an hour and a half before the show, we're not going to let him on.
You know, it's sort of tough, Mr. Simpson, and I think people at home understand that if you tell me this is the truth, now obviously I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I have read transcripts.
Yeah.
I have read information ad nauseum, ad infinitum about this case. But for simply you to say words doesn't make it true. For you to say, I'm going to give you the truth, that doesn't make it true.
No. See, here's the difference. Here's what the media gets lost. They think their opinion is fact. I'm not good. If they want to ask me my opinion, I separate my opinion from facts. What the media has done to me, they've gone on TV and misstated facts. I've said over and over in every interview that I've done, I want to correct the misstated facts and the misconceptions about what happened in my case. My opinion, I accept everybody's opinion. I don't have any problem with anybody giving an opinion on any talk show or any show like this, as long as they say that their opinion. My problem is, too often you guys report those things as facts that was in my case.
Yeah, I will be very, very interested then to listen to you point out to Mark Fuhrman where his facts are wrong. Finally, do you, David, have any further venture planned with Mr. Simpson? The polygraph online, this sort of thing, other than what we've just been talking about?
I think that it's going to be so successful that I do believe we're going to have to bring him back a few more times so he can get to everybody's questions. And I would hope one day that if he does go to the if he can do the polygraph after his appeal is done, that we could do something together. But I just think that it's going to take more than 2 hours for him to tell his side of the story. You know, I mean, a perfect example is yesterday I got up, and I've been with him now for 2 days in New York, and I pick up the paper, and in it says how he sent an entourage to rent a bar to have a party in last night.
Adams.
I was with him, and I know that it didn't happen, so it makes me get more excited about doing this theirside.com, where we can bring people on and they can tell their side of the story without anybody else being able to cut it and edit it and change things that are said.
Yeah, you got to understand, if the public asks my opinion, I'll give my opinion. I'm hoping not to have to deal so much with my opinions than deal with facts. Like you asked me some facts about the case early on about police officers seeing gloves and stuff. I can discuss the facts. That's the only thing I really want to clear up. If they want to know my opinions, hey, I'll give my opinions.
Just to throw this out, and I know we're almost out of time, but just to throw this out, there's no way you, O.J. Simpson, could know the facts about those cops and what happened because you weren't there. So you can talk about what you think the facts are, but you can never say, I know the facts, because you weren't there.
I was at every day of the court testimony. The only facts I'm alluding to is the facts of my case. Every show I've been on, I said I want to talk about the facts of my case. I know what the facts of the testimony was. You just made a statement early on about all the cops seeing it. That's not what they testified to.
No, I said there were 16 officers there on the scene before Mark Fuhrman ever showed up.
The implication there was that they saw the two. No, the implication was that they saw the gloves. That was the implication. And my point is, that is not what the testimony was in the case. And that's the only thing I'm talking about is my case. You can believe I'm guilty, but you can't change the facts of what was testified in my case. And over and over and over, I'm noticing that the media misstate the facts of my case. And I think if you look at every interview I've done the last 2 days, I've hammered that fact. I want to talk about the facts of my case.
All right.
More than anything.
All right. Yeah. Well, the facts are, I think, what everyone's interested in.
Okay.
O.J. Simpson, David Marshall, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, stay with us because we're going to extend the program just a bit. I'll be right back.